Welcome back, everybody. This is Aquatic Space, and today we're going to be covering the installation of a clean water RODI system from Marine Depot. This system is what gives you the pure water that's going to go into your fish tank instead of just using regular tap water. We're going to cover the installation of the tubing, the filtration system itself, the wrench, the fitting to the water source. Also, we'll be covering the Tsc membrane, or the thin film composite membrane, and the installation of that. All right, everybody, now we're going to dive into the filtration system a little deeper. So this is the inlet side, and this is the sediment filter that the water is going to pass through first. It's going to take out like silt, and so basically anything heavy that's going to damage the Tsc membrane. Second compartment it's going to pass through is into the carbon filter. The carbon filter is going to remove a little more fine things like chlorine and chloramine that could also damage the Tsc membrane. From there, it's going to pass up into the Tsc membrane itself, which, like I said, had the rejection rate of 95 to 98%. And so what that's getting out is the things that a lot of people think of. It's going to get out the salts, it's going to get out the bacteria, and it's going to get out the heavy metals out of your water as well. So these are really to protect this membrane and take out some of the larger particulates. So then it's going to pass into this DI resin, or deionized resin. So basically it's filled with positively and negatively charged ions, which attract the remaining contaminants from the water. So basically like phosphates, nitrates, and silicates, stuff like that. So once it gets through there, then it's going to come through the outlet hose. They sell a RO system, which is just going to be for reverse osmosis. They sell a 4-stage basic version. This is the 4-stage advanced. They also sell a 6-stage and a 6-stage advanced. 6-stage basically just means that they add another canister of carbon just to make sure that you get everything out of there. And then also the 6-stage adds one more canister of deionized resin, basically so you have 10 inches always of resin that the water's passing through. So as it starts to dissolve or change colors, you can change that canister out, add a new one while it's passing through the other resin. So that's just for areas that are have really bad water, like Florida, Oklahoma. I don't know, you can check it out, but there's probably about at least 2/3 of the states that probably should have a 6-stage, but if you have anything, I feel like it's better than nothing. Anyways, something else you get with the advanced stage is you're going to get a pressure gauge. It's going to read the pressure of the water that's coming into it, and basically the water needs to be at a high enough pressure so it can actually push through the system, but also not too high pressure to damage the system itself. And you'll find that in your manual, the PSI range. It also comes with a Tds meter, which is total dissolved solids. So it's basically going to be all the contaminants in your water that's removed. It's going to have 2 sensors, one on the inlet and one on the outlet, that's going to track the deterioration of the Tsc membrane, and it's also going to track the deterioration of the deionized membrane. And so it'll basically tell you when to replace either filter. Another thing, this is a flush valve on the advanced systems. So basically when you're filling up water buckets or whatever container you're storing salt water and fresh water in, let's say you go a day without supplying that water, and this is just sitting, you would turn this flush valve and run all the water straight to the waistline, which is going to be this yellow line right here. And you want to flush it for about 30 seconds just to get anything that's kind of just been sitting in there, the stagnant water, out, and then go ahead and turn the flush valve off and start pumping clean water into your containers. All right, so the first step of this is we're going to install the inlet hose. So the inlet hose is going to be this black hose right here, if I can get it out. Before you do this, okay, so this is the garden hose adapter, and I did get the advanced set up. I didn't see what all it came with it, so I got this one plastic adapter here. But last time I checked, they have several different adapters. They also have metal ones. I don't plan on sticking with this one forever. They got ones that mount underneath your sinks, so it's real discreet and away. I'm not sure what all the other ones are, but they're real handy. I've seen them before. This one I'm going to mount just temporarily to the washer. Okay, so I'll just take it on and off currently till I can get like a T and run water to the filtration system and the washer, or however I'm going to go about that. Also, I'm going to show you a temporary setup. This isn't mounted to the wall yet. I'm going to mount it to the wall, but I'm also going to show you proper storage if you aren't going to use this for a long time and what you're supposed to do. So basically what you want to do is turn off the valve before you unscrew the washer. That way you're not pouring water everywhere. And you're going to go ahead and screw this. You'll screw this garden hose adapter onto the cold side. You don't want to install it to the warm side because that damages the filters too. You don't want the water to go exceed 100 degrees. So you'll install it to the cold side, and then you'll take an end of your of the black line, the inlet line, and this has O-rings in there. It should just snap right in. So you go ahead and put it in there, and there it snapped. So it's in. Then you'll take the other side, and you're gonna run it straight to the, again, this isn't pretty, but you'll run this to the outlet of the cold water side there. So, it should just kind of pop right in. All right, next up, you're going to take your blue line, which is your outlet line. This is going to be your good water, and we're going to plug it in the outlet side, like so. The yellow line, again, is the wastewater line. We're going to run the wastewater and the good water into where you dispose of wastewater. So we're going to run these lines down into here where the washer disposes of its water. Now the reason for this is we're going to flush the sediment and carbon filters of their dust and debris. That'll increase the longevity of the TFC filter, which we will not install yet until after we flush the system. Another thing you want to do is you're going to take, I've already pre-loosened this, but you have this little fancy wrench here, and you put it on there and you just twist clockwise, and once you break it loose, you go ahead and remove the deionized canister from the system. So just one last check. You want to check your fittings. Might want to check the company's fittings too. Make sure that they're all on. Make sure that you got your waste lines far enough in there. And we don't want the PSI gauge to read over 85 PSI. If it gets above 85 PSI, then we want to shut it off and you'll need a different water source. What we're going to do is we're just going to turn the water on, make sure it fills up the two canisters, and then we're going to let it go ahead and just cycle the water out for 5 minutes to clean them out. So turn on this water. Notice the water is filling up inside the canister slowly. Alright, so when it said, and this is the reason why I'm doing everything first with you guys, when it says remove the deionized resin, it means remove this right here. Screw this back on, because the water started pumping out through here. So let's proceed. And it should pump out the good line, and we'll let that run for 5 minutes once I see that it is pumping out this one. Alright, so you see there's a steady stream of water. So we're just going to feed that down in there, that way the pressure doesn't pull it out. Check the PSI. I have it running, let's see here, we're going to see what full blast does. All right. So the pressure I'm getting is about 21, 22 pounds of pressure. So that's pretty good. It's not 85, and it's pushing through the system. So we're gonna let that run for 5 minutes, and we'll move on next step. Okay, so the system has flushed for 5 minutes. So I went ahead and I shut off the cold water supply. I went ahead, and you're going to need to disconnect the pressure gauge line. You're going to need to disconnect the supply line to the TFC membrane housing to unscrew it, and we're going to install the TFC membrane. So go ahead and unscrew it. There's definitely going to be some water, so make sure you're not in any electrical area when you're running all this. Alright, so you want to make sure it's fully seated in the housing. You go ahead and reinstall everything now. Now the TFC membrane has a antibacterial chemical on it that's dangerous to animals and human consumption. So basically what you're going to want to do is we're going to hook this back up, and then we're going to flush it for 30 minutes, and then we'll be able to reinstall the deionized resin and all that. But we want to make sure we flush the TFC membrane, make sure we get all that antibacterial component off of there. That way it's not harmful to our fish, and I don't think anybody should be drinking this water, but harmful to you guys if y'all are. Let's go ahead and reconnect these. So I'm going to go ahead and reconnect the line to the pressure gauge. We'll reconnect the line to the TFC filter housing. Make sure they're good and installed. And so next thing we'll go ahead and do is we'll turn the water back on, and we're going to let it pump for 30 minutes. So what you want to do is just every time you do a step, make sure you're double checking all your fittings. The water's not going everywhere, which you just took apart or installed. Check your pressure. So now there's more resistance in the housing. So my pressure gauge went up to about 42 psi, and the reason is because we added another filtration system in there. So that's going to create resistance against the water flow, creating higher pressures in our lines. It'll also up once we go ahead and put the deionized resin canister back in there. We just want to make sure we don't get above 85 psi. So I'm going to go ahead and check my lines, make sure that they are in fact draining. So there we go. It took a second to fill up that canister again and fill up the that filter, but it is now pumping back out. Also, the waste line's pumping out. So now that I've visually inspected that both are cycling, I'm going to go ahead and wait 30 minutes. All right, everybody, so it's been 30 minutes. We went ahead and flushed out the entire system, flushed off that antibacterial coating that was on the TFC filter. So now we're going to go ahead and install the probe to monitor how well the cartridge is doing, and then we'll install the other probe and also install the DI resin. So what you want to do is, the inlet one is not as easy and straightforward. So basically this one is to measure the water between the TFC and the DI resin. That way you can see the integrity of this filter and know when it's basically expiring. So the water, like I said, is going to go through here, here, up into this canister, and then there's a line that runs out into the DI resin. Now you got cords and stuff running everywhere, and you have several different blue ones, so you're going to want to follow these. I've already identified where it goes into the top filter and down into the DI filter. So just going to double check one last time just to make sure. So it's going to be this line right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut this in half. You want to make sure you're double checking, because when you cut this, you're gonna have to use more tubing if you're wrong. So go ahead and cut that. Flatten these back out. I'm gonna take the inlet probe. We're just gonna go ahead and connect it like so. And then connect this other side. Make sure it's in. All right. Now this probe is in to measure, again, the integrity of this filter. So now we're going to go ahead and install. All you got to do is just drop this canister in there for the DI resin. Go ahead and pick this up and screw this back on. I tighten things fairly tight. If you're not confident in your grip, there's always, again, the filter wrench. I just don't want to over tighten and cause the O-ring to leak due to over tightening. I'm going to check the system, make sure there's no leaks in it, and I'd advise you guys do the same. So now, this probe is, again, to check how well the DI resin is doing its job. So we're going to go ahead and take out the clean water line, and we're going to go ahead and install this. And it doesn't matter which way you install it, because inside there's two metal prongs that run through the cords and read out on the TDS meter. So it can be either way. So you go ahead and slide that in, and then slide your good line in. There we go, till it properly seated. So now everything's in properly. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn. So once you install the DI filter, now these filters have been primed, and so is the top filter. They've also been washed of all their particulates and anything that would be stressful on the next filter. So what we're going to do is we're going to filter out 2 gallons of the DI resin. And after 2 gallons, the system will be ready to pump into 5-gallon buckets or your container, wherever you store your water at. The system will be ready to go. So on your TDS meter, basically what you want to do when it comes to replacing your filters is your sediment filter and your carbon filter will be replaced every 4 to 8 months. Now that's a pretty wide range, but it depends on how dirty your water is. It's, from the city, town you live in, how fast these filters are going to start failing. So about every 4 to 8 months on these two. Your TFC filter up here needs to be replaced every 1 to 2 years. And your deionized resin will need to be replaced when it's the resin, and I have a picture that I'll show you guys up close of what the resin looks like new, but it'll start turning an orange color, kind of see-through, and once it reaches about 1 inch from the top, it'll start at the bottom, but once it reaches about 1 inch from the top, you want to replace that filter as well. So to read your TDS meter, you'll hit the on button, and so if you flip the switch to the inlet, that's going to read the meter that you put on the inlet, which is the red one, or your probe, sorry. And then if you swap to the out, it's going to read your probe that you put on the outlet line. So basically, what you want to do is you don't want it to drop 5 psi. If it drops about 5 psi, that means there's less resistance. The filters aren't doing their work, so you'll need to replace these two. That's going to be an indicator on that. Your total dissolved solids is going to be different anywhere you go. So basically what I'm going to do is just keep a mental note, actually I'm going to write it down on my inlet that it's 7 parts per million that's being put out from my TFC filter, and then on the outlet it's 0 parts per million. If it raises too much, then you're going to want to replace these filters. Now the safe way, if you're not penny pinching on this, is just to replace everything half the time that they said to replace it. So just to make sure you are replacing it within the time. So these are 4 to 8 months. You replace them every 4 months or 5 months. That's going to be good. This is 1 to 2 years. So if you replace it about annually, That's going to ensure that the system's operating properly. And then your deionized resin, if you want to replace it at about 2 inches, that'll ensure that your water parameters aren't going to be affected due to your RODI unit. All right, everybody, right now we're pumping the 2 gallons of water that we're going to discard. So all you do is discard it, but basically this is the setup. Now again, I just have it set on the washer machine, but I'm going to end up mounting it on the wall. So basically I use this little clip down here just to hold the water line in position. Again, after I discard this 2 gallons of water, it's going to, this is going to serve as the line that has the clean reverse osmosis deionized water. The yellow line is going to be the waste line, and what I've noticed already is the waste line is fairly high pressure. I think they said, and I don't want to be quoted on this, but I think it's 4 gallons of wasted water per every gallon of clean water. So there's a lot more pressure coming out this line, and it actually kind of shot out the top. So what you'd want to do is, if you have an area with a lot of electrical items or whatever, or any electrical outlets, you're going to want to secure that. And so when you walk away, you don't have water all over the floor, catch your house on fire. So I'm going to make sure that's secured. This is secured. So one last thing we're going to cover about this is proper storage. So if you're going to do a temporary setup like this, you're not actually going to mount it and keep it in that spot. What you'll do is you'll fill up your buckets or whatever container it is that you're trying to fill up with the appropriate amount of water. And when you're finished, you go ahead and obviously detach the lines, hook everything up the way it is. But what you want to do is take all the lines, so the black, the yellow, the blue line, and you know, rubber band them or however above the unit. You want to keep water in the unit. You do not want it to dry out. Drying out causes the filters to go bad. I don't know exactly why, but they just basically say in the manual to not let these canisters dry out. And so you'll just keep the cables wrapped up above it, keep them filled with water, and then again, the next time you hook it up, if you don't have the advanced system to flush for 30 seconds, just go ahead and pump your water 30 seconds into a waste bin, and then go ahead and start pumping your clean water again. That was the installation, how you set up the RODI system from Clean Water and Marine Depot. Till next time.